Okay. Order. Wendy Morton to move the motion.
Thank you, Ms McVeigh, and I beg to move that this House has considered government support for waste collections in Birmingham and the West Midlands. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship today and to open this debate on government support for waste collections in Birmingham and the West Midlands. Waste collections and waste services are at the heart of what local authorities do and underpin an essential part of the daily service that they provide to their taxpayers. However, what we've seen over the last 12 months in Birmingham, which has impacted further on the wider West Midlands area, including in my own constituency in the borough of Walsall, is a breakdown in waste collection services because of the year-long industrial action in the Labour-run city. Industrial action which has left rubbish piled high on the streets, fly tipping across the city and in neighbouring boroughs such as my own, rats, or as they have become known, Miss McVeigh, squeaky blinders, running rampant through the streets, and even the army being called in to manage a logistical operation to prevent a public health disaster, and a region being reported right across the globe for all of the wrong reasons. I spoke with my right honourable friend, my neighbour for Sutton Coldfield, who sadly is unable to be with us today, and he reported that the situation in his town is actually in some areas getting worse. But to start with, what I want to do is focus on some positives from my own Conservative borough in Walsall. We know in Walsall, like in all boroughs, we face challenges with regards to waste collections, to waste management and, importantly, waste crime. However, just before Christmas, our Cabinet on the Council approved a new waste strategy for 2025-2035. Waste not, want not. Walsall's journey to sustainability. At its heart, it recognises that waste management is fundamental to public health. Central to this ambition will be the opening of a new state-of-the-art household waste recycling centre and waste transfer station in my own Aldridge Brown Hills constituency. The £32 million investment is designed to reduce the volume of waste going to landfill by improving recycling rates and sorting capacity. It has the capacity to manage up to 40,000 tonnes of waste a year. A reuse shop and workshop area will also operate on site, refurbishing items for resale and keeping usable goods out of the waste stream. Last September, our Council invested a further £4.4 million in key areas of environmental enforcement, which were seen as priorities by members of the public. This additional support includes a fly-tipping crackdown, an expansion of fixed penalty notices, bulky waste enforcement and an expansion of CCTV. Things that I know from my own inbox and social media are things that matter to people. A series of initiatives which will have a significant impact on ensuring better environmental management, and I'd like to congratulate the Council for that. But good environmental management and waste collection is also massively underpinned by networks of volunteers who week in and week out go about their communities to clear rubbish and to pick up litter. In my own constituency, we're greatly supported by volunteers such as Mike Hawes in Aldridge, Bev Cooper in Feasy Park Farm and Martin Collins in Pelsall, to name but a few. They give their time freely to maintain civic pride in our communities. And I also commend the work of Keep Britain Tidy, an organisation which helps foster literally thousands of people across England taking action to reduce litter, protect nature and create a cleaner, greener future for everyone. Because improving the environment on our doorsteps is so important. Positive action by a local council such as my own in Walsall, with a strong network of community volunteers assisted by organisations such as Keep Britain Tidy, are helping us promote environmental management and responsibility to reduce waste crime and improve our ability to be able to focus on improved rates of waste management and recycling. But of course, that cannot be said by our nearest neighbours in Birmingham, because when you have a major industrial waste dispute on your doorstep, it impacts on your own neighbouring community and the wider region, as the strike in Birmingham has most definitely demonstrated. The ongoing saga that is the Birmingham bin strike has now entered its second year. The whole strike is causing massive reputational damage to the United Kingdom's second city and to the wider West Midlands region. Indeed, the battering that the city has taken stretches across the globe, with news outlets such as the Australian Broadcasting Corporation featuring the story under the headline "Rats on the Loose," and international press openly debating the mayhem in the Midlands as those squeaky blinders ran riot. The sheer cost to the taxpayer as well is simply eye-watering. Between January and August last year, the council spent £8.4 million on agency staff and a further £5 million on outsourced contractors, totalling a staggering £1.65 million per month. This is three times the monthly spend on waste collection services in 2024, which were costing £533,000 per month. And all of this from a council which is effectively bankrupt. At the same time, it's estimated the council have lost £4.4 million in revenue as it was forced to suspend garden waste services to prioritise waste collections. If the strike continues until the end of March, then the one-off costs, including additional street cleaning and security, as well as lost income, are anticipated to rise to £14.6 million. On the 28th of January 2025, so that's almost a year ago, Birmingham City Council acknowledged their extremely poor recycling rates, the second lowest of any unitary authority in the country, at only 22.9%, a far cry from the 65% target expected by local authorities in 2035. And of course, such was the impact of the strikes across the city, one of the first services to be cancelled was recycling services. So, yeah, of course I will.
Thank you, Chair, and I thank her for giving way, and I'm sorry to have missed the very start of her speech. I'm listening carefully to what she says. I'm curious to know whether she also raised concerns about cancellations to services in Birmingham in the days when the authority was suffering the sharpest cuts in funding of any metropolitan council, amounting to 40p in the pound for every Brummie.
Thank you. I'm grateful to my Birmingham neighbour for his intervention. Of course, the focus that I have placed on this particular issue of waste is the impact on my constituency. And it's just over 10 years since I was first elected Miss McVeigh, and this is the worst situation that I have ever seen on my doorstep. I have staff members living in Labour-run Birmingham City Council area who still have wrapping paper from Christmas 2024 in their recycling bins.
Must give way.
Of course.
I thank the honourable member for giving way and apologise for missing the very first moments of the debate. This is having a profound impact. It's a travesty what's going on. There's a complete failure of leadership, but this is bleeding out into the wider area. My constituency borders Birmingham. We've got instances where you've got streets of two halves. One half is in Birmingham City Council where the bins are piling up. The other half is in Bromsgrove where the bins are collected. But we're seeing an acute rise in fly tipping. Does she agree with me that this is a failure of leadership? There is no excuse for a global city in a G7 developed country to be facing a leadership failure this acute.
My honourable friend hits the nail on the head. We are talking about the UK's second largest city. I really, really worry about its reputation, and I really, really worry about the distinct lack of political leadership. Our mayor seems to want to wash his hands of it. In just 1 second, and then I will. I try to raise the matter in this House, much to the annoyance of Mr. Speaker. But I know that there are residents across Birmingham. I have friends who find this deeply frustrating. They pay their council tax and they do not get this most basic of services. Yes, of course.
I thank the member for giving way. Would the member agree with me that it was under the previous government that unelected commissioners were imposed on Birmingham City Council by a previous Conservative Secretary of State, Michael Gove? Since that day, it has been run by unelected commissioners, and you are trying to blame the political leadership, which in fact is held to ransom by the commissioners. Are you saying it was the wrong decision to start off with to impose unelected commissioners on Birmingham?
Ms Maffei, no, I'm not. The reason that the commissioners were put in place was because the City Council, Labour-run Birmingham, was failing, which is why the commissioners came in. What I'm saying is that we are facing a lack of political leadership. I try and raise it in various forums, and nobody seems to want to actually get this resolved. And what bothers me most is the fact that there are residents there who pay their council tax, and they need a voice. They need somebody to be standing up alongside other Birmingham MPs and councillors and saying it's time to get this fixed. The other reason that I stand up on this point, Madam Chair, is because I have constituents who actually work in the sector. They're being impacted, as well as my peripheral parts of the constituency, like my honourable friend for Bromsgrove, where we feel the impact, and it's my constituents that have to pay the extra cost for the extra fly tipping, and that cannot be fair. But the net result, going back to recycling, of cancelling recycling, is that the poor figure of 22%, it's already 22%, has plummeted to just 15%. We see major fly tipping hotspots right across the city, and of course fly tipping, when your bins go uncollected for months on end, respects no borders. In Feasey Park Farm Ward, which does border Birmingham City Council, we have seen a constant uptick in people crossing the border to fly tip. And in all of this point about consistent lack of political leadership keeps cropping up. Where has the Labour Mayor of the West Midlands been in all of this? Nowhere. On Radio West Midlands, as recently as the 18th of December, he stated, "I don't employ the workforce, and I have done all I can." Well, to be honest, Mr Mayor, to the outside world, that doesn't appear to have been an awful lot, is what my reply would be. The Mayor may not employ the workforce, I get that, but the Mayor knows the reputational damage this is doing, not just to Birmingham, but also to the wider West Midlands. And as the most senior elected politician in the region, he should have been far more proactive and visible in ensuring a resolution was found, or encouraging people to get round the table and sort this out. So, does anyone believe that had Andy Street still been the Mayor of the West Midlands, he wouldn't have moved heaven and earth to ensure that the escalation of this strike was stopped and resolved at the earliest opportunity? Because I'm pretty damn certain that he would have done. Ministers appointed now as far back as September in the Department of the Housing, Communities and Local Government, in all their responses to me and others in the House, it appears they don't even to have held meetings with the leaders of Birmingham City Council to advance a resolution on this matter. So surely, of course,
I'm most
nothing
grateful
if not generous
to her. She has been generous with her time. I must add, listen to her comments about the former mayor with half a smile on my face, because I find in my constituency I have to chase endless promises that were made to my constituents about things that were delivered, which are about as real as fairy dust. But that's a topic for another day. Does she accept, and I say this as a former trade union official, that there are only ever two parties to a dispute, in this case the union and the council? These are the two parties that need to sort this dispute out, and it gives an impression to our constituents that is not accurate to suggest otherwise.
No, thank you, Ms Maffei. No, and with all due respect, I don't agree with what you're saying. There may be two parties to ultimately resolve the resolution, and I'd be the first to admit I'm not a trade union specialist, nor a trade union member. But what I'm saying is there needs to be leadership on behalf of the residents to say we need to get this resolved once and for all. And that is what is absolutely lacking. And surely if the Mayor won't show any political leadership, then ministers within the department should show some political leadership. Because, of course, where are the leaders of Labour Birmingham City Council? Councillor John Cotton walked away from negotiations on the 9th of July. That, as of today, is, 196 days ago? That, to me, isn't political leadership. That's called letting down the communities you serve, the communities that elect you. But one of the refrains we constantly hear is that the political leadership of Birmingham City Council's hands are tied because, of course, due to the intervention of the commissioners, which was highlighted earlier. Well, if we accept that, then we also have to accept that the commissioners are the appointees of the government and are now, under this government, responsible to the ministers here in the current government's Department for Housing, Communities and Local Government. So surely that's where we should be getting the political leadership or even the common sense that is badly needed to resolve this dispute once and for all. This strike is harming residents, it's harming local communities, it's harming our reputation. As recently as last week, civic leaders were now calling for urgent action to end this dispute, and they quite rightly commented, waste collection is not an optional extra, it is a fundamental public service. So the government must surely take heed, as waste collections are a fundamental service. And when you can't manage waste collections, you can't manage your local authority, because you fundamentally let down your residents at the very most basic level. So to conclude, now is the time for action on the part of this government to get to grips with waste management in Birmingham and ensure that this ongoing industrial action stops impacting not just on Birmingham residents, but on the wider West Midlands, including the borough of Walsall.
I remind members that they should bob if they wish to speak in this debate. I will also remind members actually that the latest this debate can go to is 6:08. The question is that this House has considered government support for waste collection in Birmingham and West Midlands. Ian Byrne.
An honour to serve under your chairship, and thanks to the honourable member for bringing this important debate forward. But I'd like to be absolutely clear about what's happening in Birmingham. This is not a strike for more money. This is a strike against brutal pay cuts, bullying and union busting. Bin workers employed by Birmingham City Council have been on all-out strike since March because the council started to downgrade their jobs, slashing wages by up to £8,000 a year. In some cases, that's a quarter of their income gone overnight. That's not reform, that's robbery. In the midst of a cost of living crisis, these crucial public servants who we clapped during COVID are now being expected to lose a huge chunk of their wages, which would drive many of them into poverty. Would MPs in this place accept that proposal? I very much doubt it, Chair. And now it's escalated. Since December, agency workers have joined the strike. That's unprecedented. These are workers brought in to break the strike, and instead they're striking themselves. Why? Because of bullying, harassment and blacklisting for standing with the union. It is unprecedented. As a former trade union organiser, I've never heard anything like it. One agency manager was even caught on video threatening workers with being barred from permanent jobs if they join the picket line. That's straight-up intimidation, and it's now the subject of legal action by Unite the Union. So what's the Council's response? Further strike-breaking, this time on an industrial scale. Despite denying it, the Council's own figures expose the truth. Since the strike began, it has been spending over £1 million extra every single month on agency labour and outsourcing. New agencies, new contractors, millions handed out, not to workers but to private firms. And the result? More than £20 million wasted so far, rising by almost £70,000 a day. That money could have settled this dispute many, many times over. In fact, it nearly did. In ACAS talks last year, a ballpark deal was agreed with compensation payments of around £14,000 to £20,000 per worker, cheaper than the strike, cheaper than the legal claims, sensible, fair. So why didn't it happen? Because it was blocked. It was blocked by the council leadership and government-imposed commissioners. And now, the very same council that blocked that deal faces over 400 legal claims due to mishandling of the dispute, claims their own legal position is described as extremely weak, claims that will cost millions pounds more. And let's kill one more myth while I'm speaking here. Settling this dispute does not create a new equal pay risk. That's not Unite saying it. That's the advice of one of the country's leading KCs. The real legal danger comes from not settling. So here's the truth. This strike can be ended. The money is there. The deal was there to be made. What's missing is the political will. If the commissioners are blocking the deal, then the government must step in now. Because every day this drags on, it's workers paying the price, communities suffering, and public money being burned. This dispute isn't inevitable. It's an ideological choice, and it's time that choice should change for the benefits of the striking workers who want to resume their jobs, serving the people of Birmingham, who are suffering at the moment, as outlined by the Honourable Member, because of the current choices being made by the Council.
Thank you, Ms McVeigh. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. Now, I'm a trade unionist. I'm a Unite member. Before I was a Member of Parliament, I was a trade union lawyer. And like my honourable friend from Liverpool West Derby, in my many years as a member of the trade union movement, I've never come across anything like this. Back in 2009, the then Conservative Lib Dem Green-run Leeds City Council tried to take up to a third of the pay from Leeds refuse workers. And what flowed from that was a strike by GMB members and Unison members against that swinging unfair pay cut that lasted for 3 months. And that was the longest continuous dispute in Yorkshire since the miners' strike. And that dispute ended successfully for the workers. But what we have here is a dispute that has lasted for 10 months. And from the outside, people are wondering, why on earth hasn't this settled? But we know why this hasn't settled. A ballpark figure was agreed, but the leadership of the council and, crucially, the commissioners, unelected of course, stepped in to block that deal, and the strike continues with all that means to the workers and with all that means for the residents of the fine city of Birmingham. I think we need to put on record very clearly that to expect refuse workers, to expect drivers and loaders doing an important job to accept a pay cut of up to £8,000, which could be up to a quarter of their wages, is simply unacceptable. And I know, of course, that the history of Birmingham City Council, and it's been a Labour council, but all Labour colleagues and all trade unionists stepping back from this, if there wasn't the background of it having been a Labour council, more and more colleagues would be speaking out against it. One of the mottos of the trade union movement is an injury to one is an injury to all. And that means whichever party's leadership is running the council. And I want to pay tribute as well, not only to the striking workers, because it's not easy to go on strike and people don't do it unless it's a last resort, whatever the newspapers and right-wing politicians might say, but also to the agency refuse workers who are now on strike. I will give way to my honourable friend.
I thank my friend for giving way. And would he agree with me that the narrative that is being played out by the leadership of the council, that this is a dispute which will impact hugely on equal pay? If that is the case, just as Unite have published the case's advice, would the council put their advice to the public so we can all see what advice they have received?
My honourable friend himself, a diligent and passionate Birmingham MP, makes a very important point, and I would agree with him that if the council leadership and the commissioners have that legal advice, they should indeed publish it, because the advice of Unite's King's Counsel, Oliver Seagull, is indeed very clear and runs contrary to the representations made by the other side in this. So we know what the block is. We know the awful position faced by workers in Birmingham, a pay cut of up to £8,000. We know the awful situation faced by Birmingham residents. And it seems to me that this is a matter for all trade unionists across the country to want to see a fair resolution to this dispute. And it's so frustrating to see that it was so close, but it was scuppered, it seems, by the leadership of the council and by the commissioners. So what can unblock that blockage? What can see things return to being how they should be? And what can result in a fair resolution for workers and residents? That can only be intervention from the government. If the commissioners are blocking the deal, the government should get involved, unblock this process and help to fairly end this dispute. And that, I think, is what the public wants, and that's what trade unionists want. And I just want to finish by actually paying tribute to the members of Unite the Union who have been on strike since March. They won't like the inconvenience that is inevitably caused by a strike to local residents, because they live there too. And too often when people talk about trade unionists and workers, they talk about them as if they're not local residents themselves, and they are. And these Birmingham residents shouldn't be being asked to take pay cuts of up to £8,000. They can't afford it, especially in this cost of living crisis. And so they're right to step up to the plate to defend their working terms and conditions and pay, but also others. And this isn't a dispute about trying to get a pay rise. This is about defending pay when people need their pay more than they've done for decades because of the cost of living crisis. So I want to pay tribute to them. I want to pay tribute to trade unionists from other trade unions who have shown real solidarity with these workers in the best traditions of the labour and trade union movement. And I hope that the Minister, when she responds, can give us some hope that the government will intervene and bring a fair end to this dispute. Thank you very much.
Cargill.
And it's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. And can I thank my honourable friend from Aldridge, Brown Hills, for securing this debate. Birmingham is a city where I was born and raised, and one I have had the privilege to represent for the past 8 years. It is a proud, resilient city, a city of hard-working families, students, older people, businesses and communities that care deeply about the place that they call home. And yet for more than a year, those communities have been living with a broken waste collection service, overflowing bins, rising fly tipping, streets that don't feel clean or safe. These are not minor inconveniences. They are public health risks, environmental hazards, and a source of stress for so many families, and for those with mobility challenges, for older residents, and for everyone who cares about their neighbourhoods. Last year, I wrote to the Council urging them to declare a public health emergency, and they did so. That declaration allowed government to provide support in logistics and for waste to be collected. But the reality is that this dispute has dragged on for far too long, and residents are paying the price. We need to be honest about how we got here. Years of Conservative austerity and underfunding of local government hollowed out councils like Birmingham, with nearly £1 billion of funding cut since 2010, the workforce halved, services that people relied on stretched, and resilience stripped away. And on top of that, historic equal pay liabilities, some dating back decades, have placed immense pressure on the council's finances. And these pressures are not abstract numbers. They are what shape whether residents get their bins emptied, whether streets are clean, and whether public services can function effectively. And that context matters because it explains why any solution now must be sustainable. This is about fairness. Fairness for women to be paid the same as men, and fairness for the citizens of Birmingham, knowing that their money is being spent on the services that they need. So let me be clear about my position. I am on the side of Birmingham. I am on the side of Birmingham's residents. I'm not here to take sides between the council and the union or to attack anyone involved. My concern is the people who live, work and raise families in our city and rely on a clean and reliable waste service. I support the transformation of Birmingham's waste service because before this industrial action began, I regularly received complaints from constituents about missed collections. Residents and businesses deserve a service that is modern, it's reliable, and it's got to be in line with other major cities. I do.
I thank my neighbouring Member of Parliament for giving way. In terms of fairness of pay, would she agree with me that we should not be equalising downwards, but rather women should be equalised up to the pay of what men are getting paid?
Cargill.
Prior to coming to this place, I worked for the City Council for many, many years, and I saw myself the impact of equal pay liabilities and how it cripples public finances. And the very services that the last Labour government invested in, children's centres were decommissioned, youth services were stripped away, and many of my communities do not want to see our City Council's public finances go in that same direction. And that is why the Council has got to take the legal advice, but the right steps to agree and come to a settled negotiation, and I will come on to that. The Council does now actually have a plan for this in terms of the transformation, including a new fleet of Council-owned vehicles, changes to how services are going to be monitored, and a phased rollout of a new collection model from June 2026. But transformation cannot mean endless disruption, and it cannot come at the cost of reopening equal pay liabilities that would put the Council back into crisis, and it would risk hundreds of millions more being taken away from public services. And let me say, this is taxpayers' money that we are talking about. So our government also has a role to play, and having raised the issue of fair funding for Birmingham with ministers, I was pleased to see that the local government finance settlement increased the core spending power of the Council by over 650 million over the next 3 years. But ministers must also now hold Birmingham's commissioners to account. They must bring both sides back to the table and reach a negotiated settlement. Leadership and accountability are required at every level. Next week, I will be meeting directly with Unite workers to hear their perspective, to understand the challenges that they face, and to make sure that their voices are part of any solution. But let me be clear, residents, not politics, must be the priority. So my message to all parties is simple. Enough is enough. It is time to return to the table in good faith. It is time for negotiation, for compromise and for delivery. And the Council, the Commissioners, the workers and union leadership all have a responsibility to make this happen. And the government must ensure that the conditions are in place for a settlement to succeed, alongside holding Commissioners to account to secure agreement, not stalemate. Birmingham is a proud city. Its people are patient. But that patience has been tested long enough. It's time to end this dispute, and it's time to restore a reliable waste service that puts residents and businesses first. Thank you.
Ayub Khan.
Thank you, Chair. It's an honour to serve under your chairship. And of course, I'd like to start by thanking the member for Aldridge Brownhills, who's been a very ardent advocate and has been extremely consistent despite not being a Member of Parliament for Birmingham City. And she has highlighted her constituent borders with that of Birmingham and the devastating impact it's been having on her constituents. Chair, earlier this month marked 1 year since the bin strikes began, and yet the Council walked out of negotiations in the summer. They have made absolutely no effort to bring a negotiated settlement to the dispute. For over a year, Birmingham City Council have continued in their pursuit to cut the pay of essential workers. And after bankrupting the city, they're diverting what little taxpayer money they have available and using it not to reverse some of the budget cuts they installed, but to prolong a process that has caused the rubbish to pile in our streets. At no point has the leadership of the Council or this government done the one thing it should have done all along. It has refused to admit who is truly at fault for stalling negotiations, for inflicting misery upon residents, and for prolonging this saga. It was a Labour-run council whose incompetence bankrupted the city before passing a budget that slashed public services by £300 million, raised council tax bills by 18%, and made the cuts to the waste management service that triggered the dispute. It was a Labour-run council that stood idly by whilst the deal put forward by its own managing director was vetoed by the government-appointed commissioners. And it's the Labour-run council that has refused to re-enter negotiations for 6 months, even as the agency staff they hired to replace the striking workers have joined the picket line in droves. Reports due before the Birmingham City Council show that attempts to break the bin strikes have already cost more than £33 million. That figure includes lost income from waste services, emergency street cleansing, security and temporary facilities. Even that figure is likely to underestimate the true cost once spending on agency staff and contractors is fully accounted for. Whilst this is happening, nearly £20 million of these costs are being met by cutting spending elsewhere, placing further strain on already underfunded services. This raises a fundamental question about value for money. A dispute that could have been resolved at a fraction of the cost has instead been allowed to spiral into a financial and service delivery disaster. And while the Council drags its feet on reaching a deal that it has spent inordinate amounts of money to avoid, it is the residents who are harmed the most. It is the residents that are being asked to tolerate collapsing services whilst tens of millions of pounds are burned on band-aid solutions. Across the city, most have gone weeks, sometimes even months without a single bin collection. Piles of waste has become the new normal. And as the streets grow dirtier, fly tipping has surged, unchecked and unchallenged. On many occasions, I've been out late at night, side by side with local community organisations, collecting rubbish from the streets of Birmingham. For more than a year now, it is my constituents filling in where the council is nowhere to be seen, doing the job it had failed to do. The situation has got so bad that some feel it's right to blame local residents for not taking it themselves. Let me be clear, the people of Birmingham take pride in their communities. They care about their streets, their neighbours and their city, just as much as anyone else. They do not deserve to be scapegoated for a mess that is not of their making. The blame lies squarely with the Labour-run council, which has broken down the social contract between itself and Birmingham's 1.2 million residents. It took taxpayers' money to deliver essential services, and it failed to uphold its end of the bargain. It didn't need to come to this. A proactive council would have sat down, found a solution, and put residents first. Instead, they have let things deteriorate to the point that the army having to be called in to clean our streets. This situation exposes the limits of pretending that this is purely a local matter. The government has repeatedly claimed that this is a matter for the local authority, shirking responsibility. But Birmingham City Council is under a statutory intervention. Government-appointed commissioners are involved in improving outcomes, yet ministers have repeatedly sought to distance themselves from responsibility. If the government has a role in overseeing decisions, then it also has a responsibility to ensure that those decisions are not prolonging misery or unnecessarily inflating costs. Ultimately, Birmingham residents want two things: for their bins to be collected safely and reliably, and to be confident that their money is not being squandered through mismanagement at a local and national level. If the council and government can't manage to even consider a negotiated settlement, it will be the residents that will be forced to pay for their mistakes. So, as I have repeatedly asked in the main chamber, I asked the Minister, will this government now sit with Birmingham City Council leaders and ask them to sit on that table with Unite the Union and come to a resolution so the residents can face a proper bin service? Thank you.
Ryan Leishman.
Good afternoon, Ms McVeigh. It is a pleasure to have you in the chair today, and my thanks go to the Right Honourable Member for Aldridge Brownhills for securing this debate in Westminster Hall. Ms McVeigh, I am a proud trade unionist, and I would like to declare my membership of Unite the Union. For generations, trade unions have fought for workers' rights against right-wing governments, and these governments always have the richest and most powerful economic interests behind them, as well as often being supported and propped up by a hostile media. But having an ideologically right-wing government as your opponent in some ways is really rather easy. Working people can generally recognise that a Conservative government will be diametrically opposed to the interests of working-class people. But the British political landscape is changing. Working-class people now also need to appreciate that any future reform government would be no friends of theirs. They were bitterly against the Employment Rights Bill. They're not here in the chamber today. And when you look at their latest recruits, it's fair to say, well, it's abundantly clear to say that they are no friends of working-class communities. But as a trade unionist and as a proud Labour Party member, what really devastates me is that the Labour Party, under this current national leadership, are abandoning the bin workers of Birmingham. For the party born out of the trade union movement, it is nothing short of a betrayal of what a proud Labour Party should always stand for. Imagining the Labour Party expecting it's okay for workers to receive an £8,000 pay cut. But as Gordon Brown once said, leaders come and leaders go. The mission remains the same. At one time in this dispute, Unite were making progress with the Birmingham Council Managing Director Joanne Ronnie, but Unite detail that Joanne Ronnie met with Unite's General Secretary Sharon Graham in ACAS talks last summer. They discussed a, inverted commas, ballpark agreement that both sides could work with as the basis of a written deal, and then agreed to meet again in 2 days' time. But then Joanne Ronnie delayed the meeting, messaging, "I need some more time to deal with the commissioners. I've asked the team to keep you informed and ACAS advised. Not clear on the issues, but you know the discussion is not just resting with me. Also the commissioners. It needs wider approval." Frustrating for us all. Then she went quiet for 3 weeks. Finally, she messaged again. "Apologies for the delay in getting back to you. It's been a challenge for me. It's not how I usually do business, and I share your frustration. However, I now have an offer for you to consider, and we'll meet on Sunday. I am free after 5. I hope you know I fought really hard for this offer, which is the closest I can get to what we discussed." So finally, there was a second meeting, with a written offer agreed by the government-imposed commissioners, but it was much lower than the ballpark deal. It was by no means a fair offer. Please bear in mind, workers are getting a pay cut of up to £8,000. The council presented this as a take-it-or-leave-it offer, then stopped talks and sent out redundancy letters in July. They haven't come back to talks since then. And all this time, while thinking it is acceptable for working people to become poorer by thousands of pounds, Birmingham Council are spending millions on this dispute. As my honourable friend from Liverpool West Derby said, over £20 million has been spent already on the strike, including lost revenue and on agency fees. How much does a fair deal cost, Minister? What farcical behaviour from Birmingham Council, the commissioners and, frankly, any political administration at any level of government claiming to be left-wing and socialist in its nature. Ms McVeigh, the truth is, I don't care about the Tories or about reform. I know what they both are. I know who they represent in this place. Just like I know what and who the Labour Party should always stand for. As well as the question of what would a fair deal cost, I put the following questions to the Minister. Does the Minister think that working class people should be £8,000 worse off? Does the Minister agree with agency workers and contract workers being used to break a strike? Does the Minister have any appreciation that the Labour Party is facing electoral oblivion in Birmingham, and that the polling from Scotland and Wales in the devolved Parliament elections coming in May looks dire? And does the Minister not see that issues like this in Birmingham, the cutting of welfare to disabled people, the letting down of WASPy women, the delaying of the Hillsborough law, trying to limit people's right to protest, the removal of a citizen's right to trial by jury, that these are not the policies and actions of the... I will do.
And also, before you do, I think we're going off topic here, so we can just keep to what the topic is. Were you giving away?
I'll give way to my honourable friend.
Yeah. Preet Kurgan.
Can I just gently and respectfully say to my honourable friend, who is not from Birmingham, given I'm born and raised there and I represent a seat for 8 years, can I just say the difference that this Labour government is making since the impact of austerity of nearly £1 billion taken from the largest council in Europe is making a difference. The Pride in Place money that's being given to Woodgate and Bartley Green is an area with a high need population It is about investing in our communities, and I think he's doing a disservice to Birmingham, the Labour-run council and the government since coming into power, and the difference that they are trying to make for the communities that I represent.
I thank my honourable friend for her intervention. I might not be from Birmingham, as you can tell by my accent, but what I am is I'm a trade unionist. This involves trade union disputes. I am also here to represent the communities of Alloa and Grangemouth, but also the wider working class, including the working class of Birmingham. And it is undoubtedly working class workers, the bin strikers and their families that are being impacted by that. And I make no doubt about it to anyone in this chamber or in this place that they have my full solidarity. And finally, my final question to the Minister is, will the Minister tell the leadership and the grassroots members in CLPs up and down the country that the commitment to socialist ideals and principles is something we should do and actually be proud of? Ms McVeigh, history shows that Labour governments don't come round that often, but when they do, working class people, as my honourable friend said, they absolutely do benefit. I make no apologies. We have done good things in government, but I'm greedy. After 14 years of Conservative austerity, I want more, and I make no apologies for that.
Now come to the front bench, the Liberal Democrat spokesperson, Manuela Pertugela.
Thank you, Ms McVeigh, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. And I thank the Right Honourable Member for Aldridge Brownhill for introducing this important debate. And I note with dismay that as Birmingham's bin strike reaches its first anniversary, the people of Birmingham continue to pay the price. The fundamental cause of the current dispute and the pay cuts and the reduction of pay progression lies in the Labour Council's settlement of the 2017 bin strike that caused the equal pay claims, which forced two Section 114 notices onto the City Council in 2023. But the Conservatives should check their own record. For years under the previous Conservative government, councils were expected to do more and more with less and less. Since then, the people of Birmingham have had to suffer what Councillor Paul Teasley referred to as the four horsemen of the apocalypse: council tax hikes, significant service reductions, the sale of important city assets, and hundreds of staff redundancies. And last March, a major incident was declared due to 17,000 tonnes of uncollected waste. Furthermore, there has been a revolving door for senior management for around a decade, and as senior managers have left for jobs elsewhere, the residents of Birmingham have been left to foot the bill. As my Liberal Democrat colleague, Birmingham City Council, Councillor Deborah Harry says, the very least as citizens can expect from their council in return for paying their council tax is for their bin to be collected. Yet, this basic service has not been delivered in Birmingham for more than a year, despite residents being asked to pay a 7.5% increase in council tax this year on the back of a 10% increase last year. Agency crews are currently collecting resident general waste every week, but recycling and garden waste collections have been suspended, leaving families with more rubbish that they can contend with. I understand. Yes, I will.
The Honourable Member, can I thank the Honourable Member for giving way? Does the Honourable Member agree that it's not just the lack of collection of green waste and recyclable waste, but those communities that live in the inner city areas, because they have more individuals living in a particular home and because it's terraced, they suffer the greatest?
Absolutely. And also, thank you to the Honourable Member for intervening. Absolutely, I agree. I understand that recycling is now at 15% in this authority. Seeing as there have been no weekly recycling collections for almost a year, it is a surprise that any recycling is getting done. Perhaps this is the good work of residents who are trying to do their best to take rubbish to the tips, despite the failings of the council and government. Missed collections and overflowing communal bins for floods are all too common, and waste to landfill has doubled and recycling rates have crashed. I suspect, sadly, that Birmingham might now be the worst performing authority for recycling in the country. And fly tipping is another recurring issue, not only in Birmingham, but around the West Midlands. including in my constituency of Stratford-on-Avon. Rubbish, furniture, electrical goods, and all sorts of waste get dumped on streets of our cities, as well on lay-bys and on farmland, and this matters deeply to our constituents. Liberal Democrats are calling for the government to commit to proper community policing and to a rural crime strategy which includes fly tipping. And I ask the Minister to set out the steps to help support local authorities and enforcement agencies to tackle this environmental crime. Back in Birmingham, Councillor Roger Harmer, the Liberal Democrat group leader at Birmingham City Council, informed me that there have been no negotiations since July. The Council and Unite are in deadlock, and Unite's mandate for industrial action is active until at least March 2026. So I say to my Labour colleagues, talks are needed urgently, as the alternative is the strike continuing into the summer, and that does not benefit anyone. In 2 of the 10 constituencies of Birmingham City Council, over half of the children there are living in poverty. The financial fallout of the bin strikes and the cumulative financial crisis of this council are being felt in the hungry bellies of rising numbers of children, and I hope that the councillors, the trade unionists and the government in Birmingham keep those children and their parents in mind and make a renewed effort to end this crisis. This deadlock must end, and Birmingham's Labour councillors need to get around the table and negotiate, or step aside to make space for those who will. And likewise, the government must tackle the funding crisis in local government. They've got to get a grip on adult and children's social care, provision for children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities, and homelessness prevention to help alleviate the financial burden on councils. Thank you.
Paul Holmes.
Thank you very much, Mr McVeigh, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And I'd like to thank my right honourable friend, the member for Aldridge Brownhills, in securing this important debate. She is an absolute champion for her local area, and I know how hard she's worked to secure this debate on government support for waste collections in Birmingham and the West Midlands, a debate which could be completely avoided had the government done their due diligence in ensuring that local authorities deliver for local communities. And I will say, Ms McVeigh, I find it that I'm in a topsy-turvy world in this chamber this afternoon when you find yourself in utter agreement with the honourable member for Leeds East. But that is a situation that I found myself in this afternoon. And in response to the honourable gentleman, the member for Alloa and Grangemouth, I would just say to him that despite his passionate speech, he doesn't have a monopoly on representing working class people. I happen to represent lots of working class people, and I'm working class myself. It was because I was working class that I joined the Conservative Party. And he talks about the electoral oblivion of the Labour Party. I suggest that it's socialist speeches of the 1980s that will destine the Labour Party to electoral oblivion, not their current policies that they are putting out today. My right honourable friend is absolutely right to bring the issue that she has here today, and quite frankly, it is a national embarrassment that one of our nation's greatest cities, indeed the second largest city in the country, is facing a situation like this. As my honourable friend said, the squeaky blinders are running freely down the streets and into piles of rubbish found outside of hard-working people's homes. I know that I certainly wouldn't want to see rats in my street, and I'm sure that all members here today can absolutely agree with that. And what is just as embarrassing is on a local and national level is the government and the Labour-run Birmingham City Council have failed to address the situation soon enough. As already mentioned here today, the waste management dispute began in March 2025, with some residents having had no collection since Christmas 2024. With the risk of stating the obvious, it is now January 2026, and the government has stood idly by. And this government still shamefully fails to recognise the importance of this issue. On the 13th of January, referring to the waste dispute as a local issue and leaving it to their failing colleagues at Birmingham City Council. The industrial action taking place in Birmingham has left residents without their rubbish collected for well over a year and is simply not good enough. It's chaotic and it's shambolic. And the issue is much more than bins not being collected. But as colleagues here have highlighted, there are serious implications on public health. And as the honourable member for Leeds East and my right honourable friend, the member for Aldridge Brownhill, said, there are commissioners in Birmingham City Council. The government put those commissioners into the local authority. The government has legislative cover to commission and start talks for negotiations to end the strike that is happening. So far, the political leadership that this government has shown have determined not to do that, and that is a stain on the character of this government, and it is a reduction in services for the people of the great city of Birmingham. As the member for Aldridge Brownhill has outlined, the fiscal ineptitudes of Birmingham City Council are deeply concerning, allowing taxes to soar and effectively bankrupt the council through extra spending and the using up of reserves, and in other words, deeply letting down residents in Birmingham and the West Midlands. There is a clear need for government intervention, but instead, Birmingham is set to receive one of the most generous payout from the government's unfair funding review, a review designed to benefit poorly run, Labour-run urban councils. And that narrative explains itself. Yes, I will give way.
Ms McVeigh, does my honourable friend agree with me that there's something fundamentally wrong here, that where a council like Birmingham City Council is being almost rewarded in its funding settlement for failure?
I think my right honourable friend has made that point expertly, and that's on the back of 7.5% increases in council tax after a 10% increase in council tax before that. Finally, Ms McVeigh, after that intervention, I'd like to piggyback off of my right honourable friend and thank local Conservative councils, particularly Walsall, and the work of Keep Britain Tidy, and the individual volunteers who my right honourable friend mentioned, who go to their communities to clear rubbish. It's great to hear that there are still individuals who take pride in what the local area looks like and who want to protect nature and want to work together towards a greener future. I'm delighted that Aldridge Brownhills will have a new household waste recycling centre and a waste transfer station opening next month, which will actively help reduce landfill waste and increase recycling figures. Mr McVeigh, to conclude, I am in complete agreement with my right honourable friend and members across the House, it turns out, this afternoon, who say that waste collections are a fundamental service. That is fact. And it is paramount that the government takes decisive action to resolve the ongoing waste management saga in Birmingham and the West Midlands. That has been clearly called for from all quarters of the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats, and us as the official opposition, and independent members, that they want to see leadership from the government to control the people that they put in to control a local authority to come to the table. I encourage this minister to do that because this problem has gone on for simply too long. Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, Ms McVeigh, and I'd like to thank the member for Aldridge Brownhills for securing this important debate, and I'd like to thank all honourable members for their contributions, and I welcome the opportunity to discuss this issue. I share the concerns and frustrations of members that have been surfaced in the debate. The industrial action has gone on for far too long, and the ongoing disruption is not in anybody's interest, and it's holding back the great city of Birmingham and its people. It's a city I'm incredibly fond of, and I think the people of Birmingham deserve better, because it's them who matter here. It's the people of Birmingham that matter. It's their voices that must be heard, and it's them that should be at the centre of the resolution of this dispute. I've heard the points raised by all honourable members, but I want to support the member for Edgbaston in what she says. Birmingham is a city that its people are deeply proud of, and they deserve to be. And she is also right to mention the funding settlement that we have just awarded Birmingham City. And I want to take on directly the point that's just been raised. The reason why Birmingham is seeing a core spending power increase under this government of 45% is not because of some kind of reward for what's happened in Birmingham. That's ridiculous. The reason is because we are reconnecting council funding with deprivation, with poverty, because we are reversing what we saw under the Tories, which was town halls dealing with the worst of austerity and the places that had least hit worst. And that is going to change, because we need to sort out poverty in this country, and you can't do that without a town hall that's got the resources it needs to help people, and that is why we are changing it. So I will give way to colleagues in a moment, but I just don't take kindly to the idea that we shouldn't help councils tackle poverty in this country. I'll give way to my honourable friend.
John MacDonald.
Certainly on this side, we fully agree with her on that, certainly. Let me refer to my register of interest as a member of Unite. Could I ask her, because it's a limited time on this debate, could I ask her to address the key question that's been put to her by a number of members? And the key question is this. The government has a specific role in this, it's a special role in this. This isn't like some other dispute between council and workforce. Because of the role of commissioners appointed by government, there is a responsibility that falls on government's shoulders. There's a major picket on the 30th where trade unionists from across the country will be coming to support their comrades, their brothers and sisters in Birmingham in the dispute. I'll be going to it as well. There's a limited time period in which actually that picket could actually be made redundant if the government actually did convene a meeting of all parties concerned. And as I say, it behoves the government because it seems as though it is the commissioners that are blocking the settlement. And therefore, I urge the Minister, if she could then just convene that meeting to get people around the table, because I think a negotiated deal could be forthcoming as a result.
Thank you, Mr. May, and I thank the right honourable gentleman, for my right honourable friend, for his question. He spells out the situation where clearly the government is not the employer, but given that we have commissioners, we will want to hear regularly about what's happening in Birmingham, and I will come to that in my remarks. I'll just give way to the honourable lady as well if she still wishes to.
I will let you continue, Minister.
Okay. As I was just saying, Ms McVeigh, the government is not a party to the ongoing dispute. This is an issue for those parties to work towards a sustainable solution, notwithstanding the question that I've just been asked in my response to it, where given the arrangements with commissioners, I will want to hear from them directly on it, and the government has that responsibility because of that decision that was taken. But I do call on all involved to end the disruption. In the spring of last year, the government took action to avert a public health crisis, as a number of members have mentioned, and supported the council in clearing the streets. And as a result, the council was able to remove thousands of tonnes of waste from the street and restart regular curbside collections. As a result of this, we have thankfully not seen a return to the crisis that the city faced last spring, and the waste has not piled up to dangerous levels. The council and my department will continue to monitor the situation closely and ensure that waste... I'll just finish my sentence. And ensure that waste doesn't build up again. And it's important to note that while residual waste is now being collected regularly, recycling, as members have said, remains suspended, and that situation must change.
Wendy Morton.
Thank you. Just to be absolutely clear then, if the Minister thinks that waste isn't piling up, does she think that the situation in Birmingham is acceptable?
Thank you, Ms McVeigh, and I thank her for her question. No, not at all. And I've set out my opinion that it needs to be brought to an end. And members have set out the consequences for residents of Birmingham, for staff, for others, and for her constituents as well. So it, of course, needs to be brought to an end. The point that I was making was that the government had taken steps to bring to a close a public health crisis. Now, government commissioners have been in place at the council since 2023 to oversee its improvement journey, and in their most recent report, commissioners highlighted that the council has made positive progress in key areas, because of course there are other issues as well, not just the dispute, where we needed to see progress. But they noted the dispute has consumed council time, diverted attention and slowed overall progress, and that's a real concern to me. The council still has work to do towards financial sustainability, and because of the points that the commissioners made, we all want to see that brought to an end. And as I said, I will want to hear regularly from commissioners on that progress. In recent weeks, the city has faced additional strike action by agency workers in waste, and as I understand it, and as members have mentioned, a small number of agency workers began a separate strike on the 1st of December due to alleged bullying and harassment. And I'm sure everybody here would agree that bullying and harassment is totally unacceptable. The council and their agency, who are the employers, must address this issue. There has been some disruption since the new year caused by recent snowfall across the Midlands, and issues at the council's depots. But I'm told that the council has in place plans to resolve any backlogs that are created. We've also had disruption at pickets, a big factor affecting waste collection since contingency arrangements are put in place. And I understand that Unite the Union have acknowledged and apologised for this behaviour, and that no one wants to see this repeated. Now, in recent months, Unite have urged the council to come to the table to find a way forward to end the strike, and I am obviously extremely sympathetic to this goal, as I've mentioned on a couple of occasions. The councils have duties and responsibilities beyond the industrial action, and I support the leader of the City Council, John Cotton, in his position that any solution to end this strike must both be lawful and financially viable. We all want a resolution to be found. I will very briefly.
An intervention will be short, though. John MacDonald.
Can I just say, this is almost heartbreaking to witness this happening. It is pure sophistry to say that the government doesn't have a role in this or has no locus in it. It is the government that's appointed the commissioners and to who they report to. I appeal to the Minister, simply get them in the same room because a deal is available.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. And I'll just say to my right honourable friend that all of the parties will have heard what he said, what I've said, and the priority that we put on getting a decent service for the residents of Birmingham, getting staff in a position where they can do their jobs. We all support that, and everyone will have heard what he has said.
Very quickly.
Very briefly, but I'm conscious, Ms McVeigh, of your strictures on...
I'm very grateful to the Minister for giving way. Could she answer this question for me? Since she's taken office, or even her predecessor, what specific advice has she asked for from officials to see if she has the cover as a Minister of the Crown through legislation to get those people in the room? Does she have that power to do that, or does the government have that power?
Minister.
Thank you, Ms McVeigh. I've received advice from the commissioners and others on the situation in Birmingham, and I will happily set that out for the Shadow Minister. He will know also that the commissioners have the responsibility to produce reports and so on. That relationship between commissioners and the government is well understood, but I'll happily write to him with the detail of that. Now, I'm not going to give way any further because I feel like I'm going to test your patience, Ms McVeigh, and I've also set out a range of responses to the points that members have made. Members have raised the issue of the equal pay challenges that Birmingham have faced over the past 15 years. This has cost the council and the residents of Birmingham over £1 billion. And as we've just said, commissioners are now in place to deal with this situation. In October last year, the council signed an agreement with unions to settle historic pay claims, which was a significant step forward. And members will appreciate that the council cannot reopen this by incurring any new equal pay liabilities or perpetuate any further discrimination. On the overall service, Birmingham's waste service hasn't been good enough for a long time, despite the very hard-working staff, and collections have been inconsistent and recycling rates have been low for a time long before the dispute began. So members have talked through these issues. Now, I understand that the council is trying to move forward and make sure that it delivers for Birmingham as it must do and as they want to do. I'm sure we all share that goal, despite different perspectives that have been aired. And as I've said, I will meet with commissioners and local leaders as necessary to progress this goal. I want to thank all members, including the member for Aldridge Brown Hills who secured the debate, and all members who have taken part. Birmingham really deserves a waste service that works. It deserves a council that can support all of its needs, and it deserves an end to the uncertainty that has overshadowed the city for too long. I am pleased that the new funding settlement will invest in Birmingham, because Birmingham people deserve much better. Working together, I am sure that we can see Birmingham move past this, be the proud city it deserves to be, and make sure that the people there come first.
Wendy Morton to wind up.
Thank you, Ms McVeigh. I'd like to thank all members right across Westminster Hall today for their contributions. It may, as my Honourable Fred said, feel like a topsy-turvy world of politics when we are agreeing on a certain topic, but it shows that occasionally it can be done. That said, the message is very clear. The people of Birmingham and the wider West Midlands deserve better. Our message, I believe, to the government collectively is also very clear. Get a grip, Minister. Get everyone round the table. Bring an end to this strike once and for all, for the sake of the city, the wider West Midlands, the residents and our constituents. Please take responsibility.
The question is that this House has considered government support for waste collection in Birmingham and the West Midlands. As many of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order. The sitting stands adjourned.